Hey, this is Ace and Beaky here. Now, whenever I want to say something, it can really sound like, and probably even some of the accusations could be true, that if I'm trying to explain what somebody is saying so that we understand what they're saying before we argue with them, that's not me necessarily taking their side or saying that they're right about everything or that you're wrong about everything. That's about me saying, hey, they said XYZ, you took it as ABC, so I'm going to get mad and I'm going to scream about it like they said ABC and scream like they said ABC, when it's like, nah, dog. You're at this point you're kind of barking up the wrong tree. They said XYZ. Now maybe XYZ is wrong, but you're not even making the right argument about the right subject. You're just going on and on and on. And the thing is that if I apologize for somebody in the sense that it's like, look, when people say Black Lives Matter, they don't mean that nobody else matters. They just mean that they've gotten the short end of the stick. It doesn't mean I'm agreeing with everything Black Lives Matter says. It doesn't mean that I'm all in their camp. It doesn't mean that we even like each other. But it's like, look, dude, if you're going to argue with Black Lives Matter, at least come at them like you actually understand what they're saying so that you can actually argue with them about the same damn subject. And I've said the same thing to liberals whenever they take every single thing that a conservative says the wrong way so that they can like make you sound like some fascist theocrat that wants Christian Sharia law when you don't. Everybody keeps trying to say it. It's like, okay, just in case some of the people who might be conservatives out there listening know that I'm not singling them out, you might think that I'm sitting here saying, oh gosh, they say Black Lives Matters, Arrow Lives Matters, shut the fuck up. And it's like, dude, whenever they're saying Black Lives Matters, they're not saying Black Lives Matters only. They're saying that they haven't been treated like their lives are mattering, so you have to be reminded that their lives matter because the system has been treating them like their lives don't matter. Well, the thing is that the same thing, if you want me to do an example on an issue I have with the left, since I'm a pro-lifer, is this, that it's like, look, guys, not everybody who's pro-life is this hardcore right-wing theocrat or anti-woman fascist. There are some people who fancy themselves a different kind of feminist who are pro-life. Some of the earliest feminists were pro-life. I'm not saying which ones, but I know they exist. Sorry, I don't have all of the info on me. I read it once and I forgot, but I'm sure I could find it if I looked it up. But the other thing is that there are people who would otherwise be libertarian, who would otherwise be liberal, who are pro-life. Now, I'm not saying that you got to agree with me being pro-life. You could have a very good argument that could change my mind, and that's fine. That's not the point. You want to make something about A or B, and I'm telling you that you tripped over X, Y, Z over here because you're so angry. And we all get that way, but we have to rise above. The thing is that if I was sitting here saying, and I was explaining how you could be pro-life and you didn't have to be conservative and you didn't have to be religious and you didn't have a single sexist bone in your body against women, that you could do that. That you could have an argument that was largely not religious and not largely based off of right-wing rhetoric or some kind of subconscious anti-woman thought. Okay? So there's a lot of intellectual dishonesty going on in America right now. And I see both sides doing it, to where somebody makes a statement and then people, almost with willful ignorance, takes that statement out of context so that you said something objectively wrong, so that they can change the nature of the argument and argue against you with this new wrong thing that you just said. So the thing is that in America, we kind of need to wake up and realize when we do that, nobody's perfect, and sometimes it is a genuine misunderstanding. Like you genuinely needed it explained to you, and when you had it explained to you, you got it, and, while still keeping your point of view, at least you could respect a point of view that you didn't agree with, because now you understood what they were getting at, and they may have been getting at something you didn't agree with, but it made sense. It wasn't this crazy, stupid thing, because even as dumb as people are, they don't do anything for just no reason. There's a lot of people who do bad things, but they have a reason. There's a lot of people who are stupid and do bad stuff, but they were trying to do it for a cause that had some validity. A lot of things that are bad aren't bad because they started out bad. It was because bad elements wrapped around it. So there's something that you'll have to take into consideration. Now, I've used an example how, the liberal left has done it with abortion and all that jazz, to where it's like I could sit here and say, okay, I understand. I would make an exception for rape. I would make an exception if the kid was fucked up. I would make an exception if the mother's life was in danger and all that jazz. But then they keep bringing up rape. And the thing is, it's intellectually dishonest because, one, nobody thinks rape is right. Two, most people who are pro-life, except the very extreme, would make an exception for rape. And three, the abortions that are done in the name of rape are kind of like 10%. So the thing is that it's something that you don't really need to be bringing up unless somebody isn't willing to make that exception, and most people are willing to make that exception. But feminists keep saying, what about rape? What about rape? And if I've already explained it to you that rape is the exception to the rule, I would allow an abortion to happen for rape. I would allow an abortion to happen if the kid's messed up or if the mother's life is in danger. I would have the exceptions that prove the rule. And that I just believe anything outside of that is wrong. They're always going to bring it up like you're pro-rape, like you're somehow saying rape is Jesus. So the thing is that it's not that they're wrong for disagreeing with me. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I don't know what it's like to be pregnant. They have validity to talk, but I can still, even though I haven't been in their shoes, I can still objectively say something is right or wrong. No, I don't know what it's like to be a woman, and I don't claim to, but at the same time, there's some things that men do that are wrong that women might have a hard time taking a walk in their shoes on, and they get to objectively talk about whether it's right or wrong. How many times do you hear women talk about how if a man was downrange and if he shot a little girl or an innocent civilian, whether he could have avoided that or not, or whether that cop could have avoided killing that innocent person, if he was black, yellow, or blue, or green? Well, the thing is that you're not a cop, you're not a soldier. So do you have room to talk? Well, after you realize that you're not in their shoes and that you need to learn about it and respect it before you cast judgment, yes. After you go through the channels and have gotten your mind down to where you try to understand the situation to the best of your ability, have a little humility and try to understand and not get on too much of a high horse, then yes, you have room to talk. How many times are people screaming at football players and have never played football in their entire fucking life? Yeah, you could say that that is an example of hypocrisy, but it's not completely hypocritical. I'm not as good of an artist as some people, but if somebody's a generally better artist than I am, but if they make a shitty drawing, then I can acknowledge, albeit I should do it humbly, that that's a shitty drawing. This is the kind of intellectual dishonesty that I'm talking about. We've all done it. Everybody's done it. It happens. But it's just, there's a deer out behind me. That's cool. I'm talking and I annoyed the deer by talking politics, a football field away from it. But the thing is that that's kind of what I see a lot happening in America, is that whenever you know somebody might have a valid point that might make you feel uncomfortable, you do everything you can to make it as bad as possible and put words in their mouths to make them come off like the most horrible Nazi or anti-American commie that there is. And the thing is that you think that if you admit somebody's right about one thing, that totally negates your argument, and you're either going to get castrated or raped. You're either going to get castrated or fucking raped if you sit here and admit that maybe even if they go in a wrong direction with it, this is the valid point that they have. And if it's a valid point, I'll give them credit. Although we don't disagree there, we disagree somewhere else down the line. So that's kind of the intellectual dishonesty that I see with the liberal left. Sometimes it's like an example of it as a pro-lifer that I feel that they're doing with being pro-life. And I know that some women who are pro-choice don't like abortion. They just feel like it should be an option on the table. Kind of like not, and I feel that, and I know that some women who are pro-choice doesn't mean that they're up for partial birth abortion. They think that, abortion shouldn't be done past the quickening or 6 months or whatever. So I'm acknowledging that there's nuance with that too. I'm acknowledging that the other side has nuance, and I'm acknowledging that some people could be pro-choice and they hate abortion just as much as me, but they still think that maybe it's an option that has to have on the table. We're facing different directions, but our heart is in a similar place. And I have to try to make some peace with those people, even if I think they're wrong, because I'm not going to get anywhere. I have to be all things to all people if I want people to see the validity and wisdom that I'm not just a stereotype that they hate. Because in America, if somebody believes one thing, we automatically stereotype them as being completely all this. That if you're a pro-lifer, you're like this religious nut job and an anti-woman Nazi, when, well, what if he's actually more moderate and secular with a decent amount of liberal sympathies and even kind of leaning vaguely towards libertarian? And what if the woman who is actually a feminist, but she somehow saw that being pro-life was more in line with her definition of feminism than somebody else's definition of feminism? Well, that's kind of like how it is with that on the left. That's kind of like how it is with some people on the right whenever they misconstrue a statement from Black Lives Matters. It doesn't mean that I'm all on the side of every left-winger, every black person on every little point. But whenever they simply say Black Lives Matters, I didn't intentionally take it the wrong way. I didn't sit here and say, all lives matters, why are you giving yourself special treatment? I didn't assume they were giving themselves special treatment. Even if I ran into a bunch of black liberals that I hated, I was at least going to give them credit and say that they brought up a point that if their lives aren't treated like it's worth the same amount as everybody else's lives, they have to remind you that their lives matter, because the system, at least their argument is that the system isn't treating their lives like it matters as much as everybody else's. That's a valid point, even if I don't agree with it, which I do. But the thing is that I'm not going to sit here and say that they're saying, nobody else's lives matter. When did they say nobody else's lives matter? I mean, maybe if they put a comma, Black Lives Matter too, then we would know for sure what they were saying. But I'm saying that this kind of annoys me with people on the right. And I'm not assuming they're saying it because they're racist, but maybe some of them are. Some of them probably just took it the wrong way. Because I've talked to some good people on the right, and I explained it to them, hey guys, whenever they're saying Black Lives Matters, they're not saying that they want special treatment. They're not saying that they're special, quite the opposite. They're saying that they're being treated like they're less than everybody else's. And if I'm equal with everybody else, but if I'm treated like I'm less, I have to remind you of my worth. That's what they're saying. Now, maybe you don't want to agree with them because a lot of them are liberals, or maybe you don't want to agree with everything that they say, that you feel, blames it too much on white people, or sees racism where there is none, or hates cops too much. Those are different arguments for a different day. But nowhere, and even if I was like the most hardcore right-winger, I would know, nowhere did Black Lives Matter say that their lives mattered only. Even whenever I kind of feel that some black people can be racist against whites unfairly, nowhere did they say that. Not that I can catch. I'm sure if you find one person on the internet who's super pissed and has gone to the dark side, I'm sure they can. But simply saying Black Lives Matters is not saying that all lives don't matter. It's like this, and I'm kind of paraphrasing an article from somebody that I met in the Army who was black, and he wrote this article. I think his name was Al Robinson. He wrote this article that kind of explained it in a way that was pretty freaking hilarious. He said, if you go into a bathroom and if you see that the toilet is for the most part working and is okay, but the sink in the bathroom is busted, and if you say, fix the sink, and somebody says, well, the toilet deserves to be fixed too, but if the toilet is working and the sink is broken, then you need to fix the sink. If you're saying fix the sink, it doesn't mean you're saying fuck the toilet. And that made me giggle. That was funny as shit. If somebody says fuck the toilet, it sounds like something that the Tourette's guy would say. But that's just my goofy sense of humor. But it's like, let's give credit where credit's due. Maybe me and this gentleman that I was friends with in the Army, I'm a moralist. He's a consequentialist. I'm a moderate now, but I was historically conservative. He seems pretty liberal. We're not going to agree on everything. We're not going to get along on everything. We might even hate each other. I hope it doesn't get to that point, but the thing is, I'm just saying hypothetically, don't get all up in take things the wrong way. Because I think a lot of Americans nowadays, and we all do it sometimes on accident, but I think people are beginning to do it on purpose. we start to take things the wrong way on purpose, just so that we don't have to sit there and think about the other person's argument. And sometimes when they're just fucking with you, I understand, but sometimes they're not fucking with you. They're trying to make a statement, and if you actually understood what the statement was, it's not as offensive as you're taking it. And if it is as offensive as you're taking it, then okay, you were in the right. But at the same time, it's like, be honest with what they're saying. There's also one more thing I want to say, just to kind of put it out there, and it's a complaint that my dad said. And I love my father. I'm visiting him right now. I'm in the great outdoors in his backyard, and he's probably about to cook something. I love my dad. I wish I could visit him more. You know, we may not have the best relationship in the world, but what little bit of love is between us is sincere, despite all the flaws and despite how fucked up of a person I can be. And I say this because I talked to a friend of mine who was white/Hispanic that had the misunderstanding of what Black Lives Matter meant. Black Lives Matter didn't mean Black Lives Mattered only. Black Lives Matter meant Black Lives Matter, comma, too, or comma, also, because the justice system has been treating them like it doesn't matter as much. That's their argument, whether you choose to accept it or not. At least argue with them based on what they're saying. Don't argue with them based on not what they're saying. I don't like it when the liberal left does it too. The liberal left tries to turn everything you say into something racist, and it's usually done by some of the pastiest, whitest, most privileged, rich man's wives and kids, you know, who like to virtue signal behind minorities in the same way that so many politicians on the right like to virtue signal behind cops and soldiers, when they're actually largely guilty of a lot of the shit that fucks over veterans and sets cops up for failure. That's virtue signaling, and both sides do it. It means that they don't really care about you. They just see you as the best cover, so that they can get your taxpayer dollars to vote for them to get the government welfare check instead of somebody that they taught you not to like. But neither of us are going to get the government check. They are, paid for by our tax dollars. The thing is that one thing that I think is a point that was made that my dad asked, and I think he means well, but some people just don't get it. It's not, he got mad whenever he pointed out how Black Lives Matters was only talking about whenever a white cop shoots a black civilian, but they didn't want to talk about all the times whenever a black civilian shot a white cop, or a black civilian shot a black civilian, or a black civilian shot a black cop. The media is not the same as the justice system. It's not right that the media has done this. But at the same time, what the justice system has done is worse. And the thing is that the justice system has gotten away with it, not just against blacks too, but against whites. And the media has enabled them to get away with it because it tries to turn a government problem into a racial problem. And there will always be a racial aspect, but it's not a completely racial problem. And that is that when a black person shoots somebody else or kills somebody else, whether it's another black person, a white person, or a cop who could be any color, generally he tends to get caught or commit suicide, and generally he tends to get punished, sometimes disproportionately so. Whenever, and I've been paying attention to this by articles from groups of people who aren't left-wing or right-wing and who don't make it all about race, who do talk about it like from kind of like a libertarian-esque conspiracy theory point of view. A lot of times whenever a cop wrongly kills somebody, he doesn't get punished. There's been a big problem with this because the police prison industrial complex has been very gang-like lately, being enabled by the militarization of the police. Something that you conservatives need to be more afraid of than black people, because that's big government that's going to raise your taxes and it's going to invade people's lives. I mean, conservatives, you need to be more afraid of the police state than the freaking blacks, okay? But the thing is, I mean, if somebody's going to confiscate your guns, it's going to be them or a branch of them. But the thing is that it's like this. Whenever a cop, and he could be a white cop or a black cop or whatever, but it tends to help increase his chances more if he's white. Whenever a cop wrongly shoots a civilian, usually black, but not always black, that cop tends to not get punished. Sometimes he does, but he has a good chance of not only not getting punished, but he has like 2 weeks administrative paid vacation, and it's paid for by our tax dollars. The proceedings and all that is paid for by our tax dollars. So the thing is that if a black guy kills somebody, but he's punished by the justice system, and he's been punished by the justice system, but the media doesn't feel a need to talk about it, versus when a cop, not always, but usually white, who has killed somebody wrongly, not always, but usually black, gets away with it. Don't you see how he kind of got off better in the fact that he didn't get punished by the justice system? And then it's really only fair that the media does everything it can to raise hell about it. Because one person did something wrong and was punished about it. That means that nothing needs to be really reported. Somebody did something wrong, they got punished about it. But then whenever somebody does something wrong and they don't get punished about it, and it seems to be that it's privilege that either comes with being white and or a police officer, then they have to raise a stink about it. The problem with the liberal media is that they make it completely like it's just about black versus white. A huge chunk of it is, but there's also a huge chunk of it that isn't. Now, there's a bunch of nuances and stuff, so this is how I'm criticizing both the police and the liberal media. I'm criticizing the conservatives who are blindly on the side of the police, but I'm also criticizing the liberals who blindly want to make this about racial identity politics, which plays a role, but it's not the whole picture. It's a big chunk of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. This is a certain amount of intellectual dishonesty that people have because they don't want to see nuance. The liberals want to see as everything as black versus white because they want to unite all of the people that vote for them, which are minorities, to be united under the Democratic Party. And a lot of these minorities, that are vote left wing, they don't always have a lot in common. The Muslim group and the homosexual group are, I'm not saying they can't get along, but they're going to have differences, and there's nothing wrong with either one, and I'm not picking on either one, but I'm saying with people who play politics, the Democrats have a lot of very diverse groups of people that don't necessarily see eye to eye, so the only thing that they can do to unite them is to unite them against one singular foe, and that would be white people. The conservatives, they do the same thing with theirs. But but they do more about the status quo. But that's the reason why the liberal left want to make everything about race. Some of it is about race, but if they can make it to where the one thing that unites all these people who would normally not get along is a common enemy, and if that common enemy is part of the straight white Christian majority, then yeah, that's how they're going to get all of the solidarity with their voters to get behind them and have them have a common thing to take out their frustration on without looking at themselves in the mirror. And the right wing does it too. And the right wing does it through a combination of feeling threatened by enemies foreign and domestic. But that's another conversation for another day. The point is that I'm saying is this: try to see nuance, and even though the media tries to make everything about black versus white or left versus right, it's really going to be about freedom versus tyranny. As somebody once said, they want you to think it's about reactionary versus revolutionary. They want you to think it's about conservative versus liberal, black versus white, straight versus gay, Christian versus non-Christian, and all that. And at varying degrees it might be, but at the end of the day, it's more about us versus them. They want us to be broken up into little tribes because they're balkanizing us. And if we did get in a civil war and fight, they would want one of us to destroy the other, and then the winner would be badly hurt, and then they would swoop down and enslave the weakened winner. And the weakened winner, whoever survived, would be the peasant class, they would be the ruling aristocrat class, and there would be no middle class to go up and down upon. Anyway, we're going to end on that for right now, and I do hope that I hear from y'all again. Thank you so much. Bye.